evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to Moving Forward. I come to you tonight somewhat frustrated, annoyed, and simply embarrassed that we have an opposition who has become an abysmal charade of immorality or amorality and disingenuousness, disjointed, and a discourteous bunch of party leaders that have ever set foot in St. Lucian politics since the independence. Honestly, I just cannot believe that we have so many liars in one party. And I'm not saying the other parties don't have liars too. And they seem to forget what they say and do. It almost feels as if they are on another planet and don't seem to realize that they are living in the real world. Some of these individuals, in my view, are some of the lowest of the low forms of life, if that is their attitude. To hear their chairman and the PRO, you will swear that they were a paragon of virtue. I find it hard to understand how in heaven's name can any one of those people in this day and age continue to think that they can lead this country. Do they really believe that the statements made by their leader, that 43% of St. Lucians are mendicants, jackasses, and barking dogs that continually bray? Many in their party are totally convinced that he threw this at the then opposition, the Labour Party. Yet many within their own party see the higher echelon of the Labour Party as academics. So the morons, in their view, are their followers. Yet here is the same leader who gives a false impression about the mendicant issues, still thinks that to give his supporters rum and chicken before an election, that they will vote for his party. Having studied social psychology and in trying to assess these individuals at the higher echelon of the United Records of the Poor Party, namely Alan, Spider, Guy, Gail, Dominic, Gerard, Nancy, our Schwazel boy, and others, I simply find that they don't live in the real world, but certainly in Cloud Cuckoo land. What a bunch of disoriented, diabolic, distasteful group of people who wants to lead a country when having the opportunity to do so before took that the then country, which was a leading country, the Helen of the West, throughout the poor into the gutters of life as if they were a burden to their society. All of these individuals, in my view, needs to be horsewhipped in public. So when I see that those same failures wants to cast aspersions on the Prime Minister, Philip Joseph Pierre, I get so annoyed. We must never forget that the PRO, talking about individuals that attended a meeting in Grosley before the election, and he saw them as derelicts, people who should have come to the realization that they are almost all hags and leave politics. Yet in my view, he's still there, dyeing his hair to make it look jet black, to give the impression that he's young. They live on lies and simply fail to see themselves in the mirror first before they cast aspersions on others. I always go back to social psychology when we talk about the looking glass self. Look at yourself first before throwing stones at others. When I hear Alan talking about economics and being a critique of Philip, in that respect, I want to ask, in all sincerity and in a genuine manner, to show us your qualification in the same subject, because, as I have said before, you run the country and you did not have one idea of what economics was really all about. I want to ask him, in all sincerity, to show us what you did and planned in trying to push the country forward in the 5.5 years you were in power. Oh yes, I remember. 5 to stay alive. Yeah, you had that. Oh, I forgot again, the Fortuna Doctrine. And before I forget, the DSH episode was the brilliant idea. By the way, do we have to pay for the horses that are not here anymore? Or does it belong to T.O.R. King? because everything seemed to belong to him in the DSH affair. Yet to date, we have not seen the bill for the land he bought at 60,000 US per acre, and also where the 180 acres was leased to him. All these documents and money that was spent, I hope, will be given to the special prosecutor when he asked for them. I saw a program dated the 13th of August, 2024, where the leader of the opposition made an ass out of himself, literally. And during that period, I really saw the mendicants, jackasses, and barking dogs that he spoke about when they cheered him on, even when he was butchering the patois language or Creole language. It was simply a pathetic sight, if I may say so. It seems as though people in this country, most of the United Records of the Poor supporters, seem to forget that CIP came in during their term in office in 2016. And when we talk about Galaxy, they signed up with them in 2017. Alan himself gave a glorious account of them when they took 9 years, as alleged, to build a hotel, which some said long before was saying openly that it was an alleged money laundering fiasco in which a Chinese lady in that company was at the head of it. I heard that in Taiwan. What I find strange is why Alan and his cohorts did not hear all of this, because my friends in Taiwan passed the information to me while I was there then in 2016, when they heard of the deal that the government made with Galaxy, even to be putting our wetlands into the deal, which it was against the rules and regulations and the law of the country. They were without a doubt very disturbed. Yet he signed with them, and we have heard nothing until he was kicked out of office unceremoniously. And then a certain fraudster came on the scene because of his beef with Galaxy, when the company then had the same lawyer with the previous leader of St. Lucia, notably Alan Chasney. Oh, I forgot that. Initially, he did not know of the individual, but now he's prepared to see what evidence this particular individual has. And he is of the opinion that the minister should go with him to see it too. What a farce and a con trick. Does he or Martinez thinks that this government is so stupid? Your beef is with Galaxy and the St. Kitts government, the last government in St. Kitts. If there is one, definitely not with this government. You're a bunch of nincompoops. That's what you all are. However, before I go any further, let us take a little time to pray. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Oh, Holy Father, once again, we come to you to ask you to bless our Prime Minister in the good work he is doing. I beg of you to shower him with all your blessings, because St. Lucia needs him, not only for now, but for the next term in office, to put things right. All the wrongs that was done to the country by the last United Records of the Poor. There is no doubt in my mind that it is you who saw fit to bring Philip Joseph Pierre at this juncture as the redeemer of our country. Father, as you know, he's doing all he can to put the country back on the right footing. And what is pleasing is that overseas investors are now beginning to have faith and confidence in our country. Yes, Father, as you know, evil never sleeps. And the devil and his supporters, or their supporters, are trying everything and anything to derail the good work that the present Prime Minister is doing. But Father, as you are aware, that goodness and purity flows around him like springtime. But they will not succeed, because good always triumphs over evil, and your goodness will flow into the Prime Minister's side. We believe in you because you are, without a doubt, the Prince of Peace, the King of Kings, and the Lord of Lords. Amen. Tonight, I want to quote from the Bible, Sirach chapter 10, verses 1 to 5. A skilled craftsman is admired for the things he makes, and a leader's wisdom is proved by his words. someone who speaks rashly and recklessly is feared and hated by everyone in town. A wise ruler will educate his people, and his government will be orderly. All the officials and all the citizens will be like their ruler. An uneducated king will ruin his people, but a government will grow strong if its rulers are wise. The Lord sees to the government of the world and brings the right persons to power at the right time. The success of that person is in the Lord's hands. The Lord is the source of the honor given to any office. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Alleluia, alleluia. To the one most high, always. I chose this passage by Chirac tonight because it tells us that a wise ruler will educate his people and his government will be orderly. Is that not what we are seeing under Philip Joseph Pierre? As we have seen and witnessed, some of the United Records of the Poor want to cast aspersions at Fredericks and Stevenson King. Yet no one has cast aspersions on the PRO, even though we saw and heard some of the rumors that was unbecoming when he was a minister and he was in power. The Prime Minister has made it clear what he expects of his ministers. And there is no doubt that they are doing the work so ordered by the Father in heaven through his anointed Philip Joseph Pierre. So when one of the worst prime ministers we have had in this country is now trying to criticize this government, then he should be horsewhipped by the Heavenly Father. I really want to know as to what planet he really did come from. This individual, in my estimation, is a has-been, without a doubt. And ladies and gentlemen, just look back for a while, because I do want to come back to the CIP issue. Why? Because many do not know really the gist of the issues, and that the opposition is trying their best to make it an issue in order to mislead the public. What they would like to cover up is the real issues of the day and their time in office, in that they made a mess of our economy and the country when they were in power. Our roads were in a terrible state, in tatters. And we must never forget, ladies and gentlemen, that fiasco on the road up north close to Baywalk Mall. I know that we tend to forget quickly when it suits us. But I will not allow you, because these are valid instances of very poor government. Our crime levels began to creep up, and people must remember that. And the lowering, as we saw then, was due to COVID-19. Not because of government policy. It was also during that time we saw what was termed the Fortuna Doctrine. Have you forgotten it? Never forget that. Wasn't it not at the same time that Nancy went to England to do an expensive course that cost us so much and failed? So when they're talking about the Prime Minister's daughter, they should not be the individuals who live in glass houses throwing stones. Did she not come back and get a position at grade 20, as has been alleged, or 21? I would need to know. What these reprobates of the records of the poor, did they know anything about crime? They would be aware that what we are seeing in our murder rates has been incubating over the years. People during their period in office were feeling frustrated, and many families were under severe pressure. Not only that, but there was a family stress that was simply absurd. I will continue to educate our people to the type of inefficient government that we had before, and to make it clear as to what transpired, because our people cannot continue to be gullible by what Alan and his poodles have to say, because without a doubt, they are empty words. I will take a break and I'll be back. Hold the line. Welcome back to Moving Forward. Now, I was talking about the empty words of the poodles and the records of the poor. They are using reverse psychology. That's all it is. Now they're making it look as if there has been a sharp rise in the cost of living in this country. That is true. When this too is a global phenomenon and not a St. Lucian thing because of government, I say to the opposition, to be honest with the people and stop being dishonest at everything you say and do. Facts are facts, and without a doubt, what your party and the followers are trying is simply dishonest and will not work. Alan, of all people, want to call the PM and his government con artists, and he took his time to explain what it meant, not realizing all the time that he was describing himself and making a prize ass of himself. He's simply doing nothing to help the country because he really does not care, but just want the power to satisfy the devil that controls his mind and body. When that individual speaks about people, must listen to the Papi Show, or Papa Show as he call it. He says, like my party. That's how he says it. My this or that. That's how he speaks. It is all about him. As I mentioned before, what made me laugh to my heart's content is when he gave the meaning of a con artist. He made it clear that it was a person who cheats or tricks by persuading to believe in something that is not true. Can you imagine? This is the same man who is doing that. There he is, throwing stones at Philip, when unbeknown to him, he was talking about himself. It shows us what an evil mind this individual has and the nincompoops he is, because he is blatantly trying to deflect the con merchant trick he learned recently, which he has been all his life and is now looking for company. Well, you will not get Philip. He will be, that is, Alan, in the lonely island of con merchants because there are not many like him. This individual in the program I saw was having this master class in the art of cunning because he had the advantage which the people don't have to delve into the CIP program and how it works. But as the previous Prime Minister, and with the system coming in 2016, when he had not long been in office, then he was familiar with it, or should have been familiar with it. However, here he is, distorting the whole thing to suit himself and his alleged friend, the fraudster Martinez, who has been to prison. We must never forget that. In 2 countries of the world for being a fraudster, in aiding and abetting him in his alleged lies and deceit. What a web of lies that we get. Some can, especially some can weave. What is clear, if Shaston and his poodles have not got this into their thick heads, is that Mr. Martinez has his own agenda. Alan even had the audacity to say that this government has been in power for 3 years and have simply done nothing. And when you hear Dominic coming out with the same diatribe, one immediately gets or can see that they are trying very hard to spread their propaganda of lies and innuendos. This, in my view, is plain to the audience because a thinking individual would be able to decipher that here are some mad men being dishonest at everything they say and do in order to mislead the people of this country because they are desperate for power. And going back to the CIP issue, I want Alan to put to the public all the transactions that took place with Range dealing with the CIP and as to what happened when the country had to pay a huge sum of money to range, and this government was the one that had to pay out the sum. Not only that, I would like him and his colleagues to tell us or give us a symposium on all the things they did that benefited St. Lucia with CIP monies under their charge. We therefore need to do everything in our power to safeguard our democracy, because from disinformation and misinformation, these individuals are peddlers of lies. They have become manipulators of fake news and are a threat to our democracy. They seem unable to decipher right from wrong. I say to you, my brothers and sisters, the challenge we face today is acute and somewhat sophisticated. And those in the opposition are not aware of this because they're still in a time warp. That is why their leader still thinks that colonialism had a conscience and that horse racing is still the sport of kings. They simply have not gone forward and are still in the threats of slavery or the throes of slavery. That is why they had so much faith in their British propagandist firm, Cambridge Analytica, who seem, as alleged, to be misleading and manipulative in the information they gave to the likes of Allen and his cohorts. Therefore, they love the lies that their leaders bring forward to them, more so claims that are not verified. My friends, I say to the government that we have to be cautious of information laundering, and therefore we should have countermeasures. They simply fail to understand facts from fiction because they dwell in lies and misinformation. You could see I'm getting excited. Those who follow that party seem to be followers that are inclined to react negatively to those that are not of their party, more so in government. Come on, big mouths, tell the public the truth. And it is important to tell the public, when you went down under the $100,000 that had already come down from $200,000 in the CIP, your government and people broke all the rules, and which this government had to put right. I want to ask a simple question, and that is, what is bugging me that you were found out, but you want to pass it on to this government? Questions are you trying to cover your tracks because of the many misdemeanors that took place? You even went on to say, a man never changes his colors. What a load of tripe. Personally, I did not understand what he was trying to convey to his listeners and the public at large who watched the program. I liken Alan talking about, when I listened to Alan talking about OKEU, and I was somewhat bemused by what the individual had to say, in that they are the ones who opened the hospital and that everything was there for patient care. I suppose this government destroyed that. This man loves to fabricate things. When you came into power, Alan, was OKU ready to open? You took nearly 3 years, to open it. Is that true? And further to that, there was talk that it was earmarked for privatization with the Cayman Islands group, who was going to be brought to St. Lucia. And they were here ready, if you remember. And one is even hearing that this was also going to be done at St. Jude. Question: did you not open OKEU because of COVID-19? That is the only reason. Because you had no other option, and because Victoria was not equipped for COVID-19. Yet, he wants to give credit to his party for opening the hospital. It was alleged that the hospital was going to be privatized. Everybody knew that. Question was not a deal being sought or made with a particular country? We need to know, because the hospital could have been opened when the United Records of the Poor got into government in 2016. Therefore, I ask once again, why it was not opened then? Also, again, why did it take 3 years to begin the work at St. Jude? When you took over, or your party took over, it was over 80% finished, close to 90%. Was it also in the pipeline to become a private hospital? Is that why a few doctors and nurses have gone to that country, even at present, to work? Yet they're registered here too. Some, to an extent, although registered here, was working elsewhere under your management, as was alleged. Is that true? At one of his televised meetings, Alan began by espousing the Creole words. Esupawe. Then went on. St. Lucia, are you ready? Have you seen enough of the Papi Show government that we have? This in itself was already pathetic, or pathetic if I say it in an English tone. Here he was, now, trying to woo Julian Alfred and her family after the way they treated her when the Minister of Education now gave her a small stipend of $150 a month. That was to help with her studies. And he and his party were totally against it, so much so they call it a form of corruption. Now that she is successful, and they see that she is going to be an inspiration for youngsters, especially young women, both in the field of sports and education, even though she went through her struggles, he now realizes that she's a vote winner. But comrade, your efforts are now valueless, and you are too late. And I'm sure she now sees you as the con merchant you described when you gave the meaning to us. And it is like, for yourself, like what I term the looking glass self. You are seeing yourself in the mirror. We speak about it in social psychology. Your plea to Julian and family was simply pathetic, and it showed your dishonesty from top to bottom, as alleged by many. If I heard it right, this individual was alleged to have said tonight, many speakers have spoken about the hypocrisy of the Labour Party and the nonsense going on about Julian Alfred and Sammy being products of the Labour Party. I must call that out now. That's what Alan was saying. Even instead of saying complot, or not complot, a complot, sorry, he began by saying Con Blanc. Maybe you were thinking of blanc, white, you know. Honestly, I thought it was a comedy, but one at the lowest level. Well, I want to point out to Alan and his United Records of the Poor that if they did not know, September 27th is Julian Alfred holiday. If they didn't know, I'm telling them tonight. Now you know how highly the Prime Minister and the Labour Party government and the people of St. Lucia thinks of her achievement. You hypocrite. In the speech by the PRO that I'm speaking about now, you know the PRO of the United Records of Poor, he finds it hard to see Stephen Richard in the unity government with the Labour Party, and even spoke about a party money laundering and drug trafficking by bringing him in. He simply forgot that he was in the same party with those gentlemen as ministers. Looking back, the PRO should have remembered that when Alan had been allowed to stay as Minister of Tourism, He literally spent St. Lucian money, like the spendthrift that he is, by having the sham he called Boxing in Paradise. That cost us a fortune. And not only that, having a Wester as a consultant at $100,000 odd. The PRO, who has nothing to say, but sheer bull coming out of his mouth and other parts of his body, was without a doubt one of the most inefficient ministers I have ever come about, whether here or in Europe. He keeps making foul statements in regards to Stephenson King by asking us to whether that the man the Prime Minister brought into his ministry and into his cabinet, more so that he was once a messenger, and now they have made him senior minister ahead of Alva, Sean, or Musa, and to give him a bigger ministry than all of them. I find that more than I could stomach. And in my view, he should not be in the wilderness of politics, in that no one should ever listen to the foul-mouthed individual ever again. Go into the wilderness. Anyone who seemed to have such gutter talk should not be listened to, because he's not educating anyone. I would really like to know whether this individual's background, because he simply has no class, just like a few of them at the high echelon of that party. At least they have admitted that it is academics we see at the high echelon of the Labour Party hierarchy. This PRO went on to say that some people like to hear what they want to hear because of their hatred for Alan and also Guy Joseph. Two people they are scared of. I tell this nincompoop, that is only in your dreams, because you seem to like hallucinating. Keep doing that, because you all will get 17-0 next time. He went on to express how deeply devious and dangerous the Barnes Bay affair is, because it seems, despite how many people seem involved in the land offer, and it is from Reno Kajada. He went on to point out that it has already been taken over. 3 years for the opening, he went on for the opening of St. Jude. This really made me laugh. When $265 million was to fix up the old hospital that had already been started, but he did not say. What he did not say was that it took his party in government in 2016, 3 years, to even discuss the project. Ladies and gentlemen, I find that so interesting. I'll have to take a break now and come back to you, because there's lots to talk about. Welcome back to Moving Forward. And I couldn't wait to come back, because we were talking about, the last government is speaking about now, that it has taken this government 3 years. What bugs me is that a hospital that was nearly 90% finished was left standing there, just like all the previous Labour projects. That is the inefficient government that took over in 2016, because they were only interested in their family, friends, and foreigners. Yet they were in power for 5.5 long years and did not open the hospital And remember, I said it was over 85%, 85% to 90% finished. When his party took over the reins of government in 2016. When one thinks of it, only 3 operating theatres had to be finished, which whole year the Taiwanese company was going to be doing. What they failed to have realized themselves is that staff and people of the South were suffering from healthcare fatigue because they were seeing very little done for 3 years. And yes, during that time they were at the bottom. They felt at the bottom of hope. However, now they are seeing some bright lights at the end of the tunnel. This PRO wanted to be dramatic, or wants to be melodramatic, when he said that dogs and goats were getting into the hospital because people have given up. Powers I say, majibetis. He even went on to say that people did not have water to take their pills that they are given. He went on further to say that they had to bring in their own sheets and soap, which is common standard. Yet under them, people were worse. They were under tables sleeping, given a contract to work at the hospital. Nobody knows what is happening because they work in secrecy. Then, these individuals are making all the accusations that were made of them at this government, because we began to see the demise of the hospital in this country when they came into office or into power, because they were doing their best to privatize it with the Cayman Islands medical services, as alleged. Even at present, there are some doctors, as I said before, who worked with this private firm in the Cayman Islands. One just resigned not too long ago, last week, I think. Much of the problems with the doctors in St. Lucia have to do with the Cayman Islands and private practices. But they still want to be part of our medical services. It is also alleged that many of those at the higher echelon of the medical services at the time were linked to the Cayman Islands medical services. Government then had them in the palms of their hands. Stoppages were common, and that is when we literally saw people sleeping in hospital corridors. And now they're trying their best to make it look as if it is since the Labour Party government came into power that all this is happening. And we should say in England, as we say in England, pull the other legs because it has bells on. Mate liars. The last government, who is now the opposition of 2, is simply useless. You have a leader of the opposition who is very seldom in the House to debate anything. We have never witnessed this with any other opposition leader. The question I would like to ask is why his private office for the leader of the opposition is not like the other opposition leaders who had to have the same place. Not only that, this individual did not want to be where Kenny, King, Philip had as their opposition leader's office, but wanted his own. Whether I'm sure that the government is not paying. I want to know whether the government, I hope that the government is not paying to house him where he is at present, because that would not be correct. This opposition leader has a screw loose, which makes him think that he's different to everybody else in this country. The privileged little fest-skinned jackass, mendicant or solitary barking dog who have the capacity to bark but not bite. Questions were being asked as to whether Renault were given jobs to St. Lucians. That's from them. They simply forgot, when making a statement like that when the project for canals was in the public domain, under their domain, they were going to allow in the plans that all the workers would be coming from China, even the individual guardsmen, as alleged. Is that right, Alan? The leader of the opposition that you are wants to tell the country that he's going to Washington to meet Martinez, the man he has never met. He's never met. And made the statement that he's not scared to go to Washington, D.C., and then taunting the government ministers to let us go together. Then said that he will pay for his own ticket. This guy is nothing but a little child who plays games, not realizing that the fate of the country depends on efficiency and good government, which he failed to give in his time as the Prime Minister of St. Lucia. When I heard this individual mention the name of the Prime Minister, you can see that they are simply upset and pissed off that he's doing all the things for the good of the country that they never did. In fact, one thought that he was being funny when he names him Philip and his cabal. Where's the cabal? Who is the cabal? You all had a bigger cabal. What in heaven's name does that mean? That is the level of his intellectual capability or capacity. What amazes me was on one of the United Records of the Poor program, in seeing the face of Alan, it says, "Mission, save our St. Lucia." I hope you've seen it, ladies and gentlemen. Here is a guy who said openly that he was not a product of St. Lucia, but now wants people to vote for him and his so-called party so as to save St. Lucia. Alan, plus, put this in your pipe. Please, put that in your pipe and smoke it in your thick head. That it is you that wrecked St. Lucia because all you thought about was your family, friends, and foreigners, especially those looking like T.O.R. King. Alan simply has a short memory, or he is a damn stupid. I put it to a short memory that when in power, this is the country which he nearly sold down the drain to his family, friends, and foreigners. Comrade, there is a saying, once bitten, twice shy. The other is where his headline is, St. Lucia is in trouble under Labour. Where? But he hasn't told us. Ladies and gentlemen, we have heard so many times that this guy is the Trump of St. Lucia. Well, I want to say to him and to Trump himself that they are now history, because both of them are going to be discarded in the sewers of politics that stink so badly that no one will want to be around them ever again. Ladies and gentlemen, I hold no grudges. You could see that. Nor do I enjoy condemning, because it is not in my nature. There is goodness in all of us, and yet the devil exists in all of us. If you want to choose the devil, that's your choice. But I choose goodness. But I've always remembered the story of the birdman of Alcatraz, and I give it to you tonight. It was reported that he was a very wicked and violent man. He was jailed for life, that he would never leave prison in his case, and it meant life. He spent nearly all his life in confinement. That is solitary confinement. There was the thought that he was simply too violent and seemed to have hatred in his heart for every living thing. Yet a little bird insisted on going into his cell every day in, day out. Even though he chased it repeatedly, the bird simply came back. The bird simply refused to give up. And finally, the birdman got so used to the bird that when he did not see him, he got somewhat lonely until he saw him again. He began to leave food for the bird. And as the days and years went by, they became very good friends. And that is when the change in that violent man who suddenly came out of isolation later and began to mix with other prisoners and became the model prisoner. So much so, he became the librarian of Alcatraz prison library because of his patience, and more so, he was well read and knew a lot about the books in the library. So much so, he became a trustful character and a very humble individual. So much so, he was eventually released. Therefore, we must never judge too quickly. And that is what I'm trying not to do. However, when the Birdman was never about, what the Birdman was never about was lying and being barefaced compared to what we have with some in our politics, more so in the opposition. Let me say that I'm not saying that some in the government are the model of sincerity. I will never say that. Many in the opposition deceive people as to the real culprits they are because they are simple liars. There's very little honesty in them, and all they do, all they try is their best at not being truthful with the facts. We see day in, day out. As I said, he was aggressive and violent to begin with. No one would know the reason why he became so. That is the Birdman. And that bird came into his cell, quite possibly sent there by the One Most High, because he saw some goodness and purity of heart in the Birdman. But I doubt this will happen here, because he has already sent us the person who will bring back greatness to St. Lucia in the person of Philip Joseph Pierre. So I said to all those listening tonight, always be thankful for what you have. Think of the goodness you have rather than the vanities you long for. At this juncture, I'll take that break. Welcome back to Moving Forward. And I was talking about vanity. Before I conclude, I want to say that Stephen King made it clear that the St. Jude Hospital should have been finished when Allen and them came into power between 216 and 221. He says, this lousy government of Allen cut short all the projects that the Labour Party had in motion. He made it clear that they should be ashamed of themselves. Stephen King lambasted them for any problem in health that we have in St. Lucia today. King made it clear that when Labour came into power in 2011, they continued the project with St. Jude without delay. More so, Labour Party continued to work on St. Jude. And I can verify all of this. When the United Records of the Poor came back into office in 2016, they stopped all projects and tried to show why it should not be continued until Fresh Start came into the playing field. What utter nonsense. And in my book, A Form of Alleged Corruption, they were not thinking of the people in the South where they had to sleep if they were admitted at the Stadium Hospital. Oh, our friend, the PRO of the United Records of the Poor made it clear that Philip should not be making deals with people like King and further making deals with Richard because of Richard and Hugh Baldus. Then he tried to defend himself from what was said in an interview by one of his ex-colleagues that he was a massage therapist. He wants to point out that he was a sports therapist and not massage therapist. He went on further to say that he studied sports medicine. He did not stop there because he made it clear that at the last election, we showed in Grosillay constituency redundant politicians which brought themselves back into the limelight when they were virtually derelict. Not only that, but they were dinosaurs of the past who refused to accept that the light have stopped. This is the mentality of the people we have in our politics at the higher echelon of the United Workers of the Poor. He's also a derelict. He doesn't realize that, as far as I'm concerned. Because he died, as I said before, he dyes his hair to make him look young. But he will get old. But that does not help. Once again, I want the United Workers of the Poor to tell St. Lucia what went wrong on the range development deal and how much we were sued for. What we saw with that deal was a lack of transparency. They showed and told the people what they wanted to hear. It is alleged that the government of the last administration wanted a deal that would put money in their pockets, which Range objected to and went on to sue them or the St. Lucia government. It was clear that the government wanted to change the deal, which Range objected to, but the government did settle with an out-of-court settlement. In the Range affair, things went badly because the developer, in fact, took umbrage to their attitude. The government excuse was that they were doing the best possible deal for St. Lucia. Se buksa samatiusa, and therefore wanted to change an arrangement that they had agreed upon. You agreed upon the thing already and you want to change it to suit yourself? They have perfected the art of spreading red herring, bluffing, have worked for them in the past. Lies and deceit is their way of spreading alarm and despondency. I listened to Dominic Fede on Facebook and immediately thought to myself, what a twit. We say that in England. He said that his party, that's we, have been asking questions, but with few answers to the government. The question is basically, where is the money? Oh, Maji Betis. Is the money in St. Lucia? Then he went on, Minister of CIP. The more he talks, the more he makes us nervous of the future of the CIP program. He went on to say that there are allegations against the minister and St. Lucia. He's making us nervous with the RICO lawsuit filed by Martinez, and therefore he's worried how much money is at stake if we don't get our hands on this money. After hearing this clip, I immediately wrote, Dominic, you are talking a lot of crap. And it is without a doubt utter bullshit. He went on to say, you need to ask questions, and you need to get angry. You're not the government. What are you getting angry for? He talked about how much is at stake with the deal government made with Galaxy. You all made the deal with Galaxy in 2017, you jack, which amounted to 1.4 billion. Honestly, I got so upset. He went on to point out that many doctors and nurses are leaving. That's where he went on to. The country because of a bad wage, so to speak. Therefore, we need to ask questions and the need to get angry. Go and get angry yourself. He simply made me angry. He didn't realize that. When he said that there are no drugs in the hospital and no beds for terminally ill people. Once again, nurses are leaving, he said, because they are badly paid. Why didn't you all pay them properly for 5.5 long years? When they were given Galaxy, he said, a sweetheart deal. Bon Dieu, monsieur a fait moi fâché. He even went on to say that police officers, he was told, needs to wear bulletproof vests that others have worn. That the government has cut food subsidies. He talks about Galaxy as if it is the Labour government that brought Galaxy here, when it is they who brought them in 2017. And it was with their approval, even when there were rumors about them in St. Kitts. He made me simply cry when he said that lawyers that are processing the CIP, when will the people benefit? He says it's lawyers that are benefiting. So he's asking them, when will the people? Is that remark? This idiot simply forgot that Galaxy had his leader's lawyer, that is Alan, who was at the same time Galaxy's lawyer. He went on to say that there is no money for schools, roads, and community centers, and they are picking up limited amount from CIP. Well, let us wait and see. Finally, I want to say to the government, we have to become adept at critical thinking. Labour supporters must become in tune with fact-checking and to learn how to combat misinformation and disinformation. They must be determined how accurate is certain information being, because the opposition can be malicious. Therefore, I say to the government, be honest with the people. Do give good information, because it is important for a strong democratic country like ours. We must learn how to debunk the lies that are put out by the maladjusted opposition. It is also important for us to have a strong commitment to the rule of law and must be trained somewhat in detecting and debunking propaganda. Once again tonight, I hope and pray that I have opened the eyes of every St. Lucian by what I had to say, more so the supporters of the government and those who now want to support them because of the good work they are doing in reviving the economy that was dead due to inefficiency of the last government. There were people who still believe in the past. We must just hear a lady trying to talk English like an ancient high-class English person. In England, dearly, all my friends were white high-class businessmen and women, lawyers, etc. I played cricket for a club where I was the only black individual until a Trinidadian Indian came to the club, but did not stay long. This lady forgets that this is St. Lucia. Ah, well, this is the lady that her leader said colonization had a conscience. Thank God that it is just a few like her. Definitely, before I close, I could not share with you. I'd love to share what I deem disrespect for the Prime Minister, Philip Joseph Pierre. A seasoned politician like Guy Joseph could not kiss his toes. This individual showed a picture of Alan standing tall because he and the then Guy made the statement coming out of which, in my view, was sheer verbal diarrhea. And the diatribe that he expounded is every time he said Philip opens his mouth, it is an embarrassment, not only to some of us, but to St. Lucia on the whole. I therefore ask him, in all sincerity, in what way is his speech an embarrassment? Or is it because he does not have fair skin? Then it is time you release yourself from mental slavery and also many of the United Wreckers of the Poor. Or do you think that because he stutters, something is not effective? That because he stutters, that he's not effective? However, I tell you this, I would have Philip Joseph Pierre any day than Alan, because every time he opens his mouth, that's Alan, just like verbal diarrhea is coming out of his mouth. And not only that, it is lies and more lies, because he's averse to the truth. He literally stinks of lies. Guy, put that in your pipe. and smoke it once again. Well, once again, brothers and sisters, I've tried to be honest because in doing so, I'm confronting the truth, however unpleasant and inconvenient the truth may be. I believe that we must expose and face it if we are to achieve, as I've always said, a better quality of life for all St. Lucians, more so those to come. I therefore hope and pray that generations to come can have a decent life, which means good health, and education that can invigorate their minds and jobs of quality for their future. As usual, I say with clarity that many of us measure success by what is done for us personally instead of what is done for the nation as a whole. Therefore, keep reminding yourself that we were born black and should be proud of that always. Go in peace, my brothers and sisters, to praise the one Most High always. God bless you. Good night and good night again. Go in peace to serve him always. Amen.